Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about what really drives financial decisions. And for all you economics students out there, this is about giving you a new lens to look at money, one that goes way beyond the traditional models and right into the messy, fascinating world of human psychology.
So, let's just start with a big question, one that kind of pokes a hole in a core idea of economics. If people and markets are all supposed to be perfectly rational, then why do we make such irrational choices with our money? Why do we panic sell at the absolute bottom of the market or jump into a buying frenzy that, looking back, makes zero sense? And this slide really lays out the two completely different ways of looking at the world. For decades, mainstream financial theory was built on this idea of a perfectly logical person, the economic man. But then behavioral finance came along and said, whoa, hold on a second. People are, well, people. It argues that our feelings, our mental shortcuts, our biases, they all play a massive role in every single financial choice we make.
So, what exactly is this field that's trying to connect that perfect, clean theory with our messy human reality?
Well, it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's this fusion of economics and psychology. And it doesn't just throw out the old-school economic theories, not at all. Instead, it adds this really crucial layer of understanding. It helps us figure out why people do what they do with their money, and how all those individual choices can actually shape entire markets.
Okay, so let's get into why this is such a big deal. This approach directly challenges the famous efficient market hypothesis. The theory that says all known information is already perfectly priced into the market. But if that were true, how do you explain things like the dot-com bubble or the 2008 financial crisis? Behavioral finance gives us a way to understand those massive events because it reminds us that markets aren't just numbers. They're driven by collective human emotions like fear and greed.
And here's the most important part. All this irrationality, it's not just random chaos. Nope, it actually follows very predictable patterns, and we can group these patterns, these biases, into a framework that helps us make sense of it all.
So we can pretty much split these predictable mistakes into two main buckets. On one side, you've got cognitive errors. Think of these like bugs in your brain's software, just faulty reasoning or bad information processing. And the good news is you can often fix these with better data or just by learning about them. But on the other side, you've got emotional biases. These come from your gut, from impulse and feelings, and they are way harder to correct because they're basically wired into our human hardware.
All right, enough theory. Let's see how this stuff actually works in the real world. We're going to look at two really powerful biases, one from each of those categories, to see how they totally shape our decisions. First up, let's talk about a cognitive error called the halo effect. This is our brain's little shortcut where if we like one thing about a person or a brand, we just assume everything else about them must be great too. It's like one good trait creates this positive halo over everything else.
And this is not some newfangled idea. A psychologist named Edward Thorndike actually documented this way back in 1920. He was studying military officers and noticed something funny. If an officer thought a soldier was physically fit and looked sharp, they were way more likely to rate that same soldier as being a great leader and super intelligent, even with no actual evidence.
A perfect business example of this? The Apple effect. Think about it. When the iPod came out, it was a gigantic success. It was cool, it worked great, and people loved it. That created this powerful halo. Suddenly, people started thinking, wow, if Apple can make such an amazing music player, their computers must be incredible too. And sure enough, sales for Mac laptops skyrocketed. The good feeling from one product just spilled over onto the whole brand.
Okay, let's switch gears now and talk about an emotional bias. I want you to really think about this for a second. Which feeling is stronger, the joy you get from finding a $100 bill or the pain you feel from losing one? Is it an equal and opposite feeling?
Well, the research on this is absolutely clear. Not even close. For most of us, psychologically, the pain from a loss is felt about twice as intensely as the pleasure from an equivalent gain. That sting of losing is just a much more powerful motivator than the joy of winning.
This incredibly strong emotional reaction has a name. It's called loss aversion. It's this deep-seated, gut-level desire to avoid losing at all costs. And, as you can imagine, it has a huge and often very negative impact on how people invest their money.
Yeah, see, loss aversion leads directly to this classic investing mistake called the disposition effect. It works like this. Because we hate the feeling of admitting we made a mistake and locking in a loss, we hang on to our losing stocks for way too long, just hoping they'll come back.
At the same time, we get nervous about our winning stocks. We're afraid the gain will disappear, so we sell them way too early. In other words, we end up cutting our flowers and watering our weeds, the exact opposite of what any rational strategy would tell you to do. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, these are some interesting quirks about the human brain, but why should I, as a student of economics or a future investor, really care?
Well, here's why it matters so much. Because you're not just one biased person acting alone. You're part of a market made up of millions of other biased humans. And when all those millions of people start acting on the same biases at the same time, like herd behavior or overconfidence, that's what creates the market anomalies. That's what creates the bubbles and the crashes that the traditional models have such a hard time explaining. For an economist, this is like finding a key to a whole new level of understanding the market.
So the big takeaway here is that awareness is power. By understanding why and when people stray from those perfectly rational models, we can start to build better ones. We can design smarter financial products. We can even create policies that gently nudge people toward making better decisions for themselves. This isn't just about protecting yourself. It's about building a more stable and realistic financial system for everyone. So I'll just leave you with this final thought to chew on. Now that you know these biases are out there, how might they be the hidden variable in some of the economic models you're studying right now? And more personally, as you go through your day, making choices, just ask yourself, which one of these biases might be pulling my strings right now? The answer could really surprise you.